How well do you really know the people you once loved? They say love can bring out the best in us, but what happens when it reveals the darkest corners of someone's soul? Today we dive into the tragic and shocking story of Gladys Ricart, a woman whose inspiring journey from humble beginnings to achieving the American dream came to a devastating end at the hands of someone she trusted the most. Gladys was a hardworking immigrant, a single mother, and a woman who overcame every obstacle life threw her way. When she met Agustin Garcia, she thought she had finally found happiness, a kind, successful man who seemed like the perfect partner. But beneath his charming facade was a dangerous possessiveness that would turn her life into a nightmare. On what should have been the happiest day of her life, surrounded by loved ones and moments away from saying, "I do," Gladys faced the unthinkable. This is the story of love turned to obsession, of betrayal, control, and the tragic consequences of ignoring the warning signs. Stay with us as we uncover the events leading up to this heartbreaking tragedy, the pursuit of justice, and the powerful lessons this case leaves behind. This is a story of hope, horror, and a cautionary tale that everyone needs to hear. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss this. Gladys Ricart was born on December 19, 1960, in a small province in the Dominican Republic. The youngest of three siblings, she grew up in a modest but tightly knit family with her elder sister, Norma, and her brother, Juan. Her parents worked tirelessly to provide their children with opportunities they never had, instilling in them a strong sense of resilience and determination. From an early age, Gladys showed exceptional promise, excelling in school and earning recognition as one of the best students in her class. She was inspired by her sister Norma, who had immigrated to New York City in the mid-1970s and successfully built a new life there. Gladys dreamed of following in her sister's footsteps and providing a brighter future for herself and her family. However, her path would be fraught with challenges. At just 17 years old, Gladys experienced her first love, but the relationship ended in heartbreak when she became pregnant, and her boyfriend abandoned her. Despite the societal stigma, Gladys made the courageous decision to keep her child, a son she named Davis. With the unwavering support of her parents, she embraced the difficult role of a single mother, determined to build a better future for her son. For several years, Gladys worked tirelessly, taking on whatever jobs she could find while saving every penny. Her ultimate goal was to join Norma in the United States and create a life of opportunities for herself and Davis. Finally, in 1982, after years of hard work and sacrifice, Gladys achieved her dream. She moved to New York City, where she joined Norma and her family in their Manhattan home. Adjusting to life in a new country was far from easy. Gladys, who spoke little English, took on a series of physically demanding jobs, including washing dishes, handing out flyers, and stocking supermarket shelves. She balanced these jobs with English classes, determined to overcome the language barrier and create a stable foundation for her future. Her efforts paid off when she secured a position as an accountant, marking the start of a promising career. Driven to succeed, Gladys enrolled in a prestigious university to study economics while continuing to work. By 1985, her relentless dedication paid off, and she became the chief accountant of a Manhattan travel company, earning respect as a hardworking and indispensable employee. Around this time, she also reunited with Davis, who had been living with her parents in the Dominican Republic. Finally together, Gladys provided her son with the opportunities she had worked so hard to secure. Gladys's commitment to her family extended far beyond her own success. Over the years, she played a pivotal role in reuniting her loved ones in New York. Together with Norma, she helped bring their parents, Juan, and his wife and children to the United States. The entire family settled in Manhattan, creating a close-knit network of support. Gladys was deeply involved in their lives, always ready to offer help and encouragement. By the early 1990s, Gladys seemed to have achieved the American dream. She had a successful career, a comfortable home, and a loving family who admired her strength and determination. Yet, despite all her accomplishments, one part of her dream remained unfulfilled: finding a partner who could share in the life she had built. Gladys Ricart and Agustin Garcia first crossed paths on a warm autumn morning in the bustling subway system of New York City. Gladys, dressed in her professional business attire, was on her way to work, like any other day. Her life, though busy and fulfilling, still felt like it was missing a piece: a partner to share her accomplishments and dreams. Agustin Garcia, 41 years old and a fellow Dominican immigrant, happened to be on the same subway car that day. Normally, Agustin didn't take public transportation. He had a collection of luxury cars that he used to commute. However, on this particular day, his car was in the shop, and with Manhattan gridlocked by traffic, he decided to take the subway to get to an important meeting on time. As the subway car jolted to a stop, Augustine noticed Gladys. With her polished demeanor and composed confidence, she immediately caught his attention. He offered her his seat, a small but gallant gesture, and struck up a casual conversation. Augustine quickly revealed his charm and humor, making Gladys smile as they talked. Their conversation flowed easily as they shared their experiences of immigrating from the Dominican Republic and building new lives in the United States. Augustine spoke about his successful businesses and his role as a leader in the Dominican community, emphasizing his charitable efforts and commitment to helping others. Agustin Garcia was born in February 1951 in the Dominican Republic, where his early life was shaped by hardship and loss. Growing up in poverty, he faced significant challenges as the son of a single mother who worked tirelessly to provide for him. His father was absent from his life, and when Augustine was still young, his mother passed away, leaving him orphaned and with no safety net. Determined to escape his difficult circumstances, Augustine set his sights on a better future, eventually immigrating to the United States in the mid-1970s. Arriving in New York City with little more than his ambition, Augustine began working tirelessly to establish himself. He took on any job he could find, juggling multiple roles and enduring long hours to make ends meet. Through sheer determination, he gradually built a stable foundation and began transitioning from manual labor to entrepreneurial pursuits. His relentless drive led to remarkable success, and by the 1980s, he had become a prominent figure within New York's Dominican community. Augustine founded several businesses, amassing wealth and earning a reputation for his accomplishments. He also became deeply involved in community leadership, serving as the head of the Dominican Chamber of Commerce and spearheading various philanthropic initiatives. His contributions included funding English language programs, establishing job placement services for immigrants, and supporting education projects in his homeland. Augustine's acts of generosity earned him admiration and respect, cementing his image as a self-made man who gave back to his community. Despite his outward success and public acclaim, Augustine's personal life was far more complicated. He had been married and divorced, gaining sole custody of his two sons, a rare accomplishment that bolstered his image as a devoted father. Known for being strict but protective, he took pride in raising his sons with the same discipline and resilience that had guided his own life. Before they reached their respective stops, Augustine took the initiative to solidify their connection. He handed her a business card with both his professional contact information and his personal phone number, ensuring she could reach him directly. He then politely asked for her phone number, which Gladys, flattered by his attention and impressed by his demeanor, shared without hesitation. Later that evening, Augustine called Gladys, initiating the first of many conversations that would draw them closer together. Their initial meeting on the subway felt serendipitous, a seemingly ordinary moment that would dramatically alter the course of Gladys' life. For Gladys, it felt like the beginning of something promising. In the early days, Augustine was attentive and generous, showering Gladys with lavish gifts, flowers, and compliments. He treated her to fine dining experiences and introduced her to a more glamorous lifestyle. The relationship moved quickly, and soon Augustine invited Gladys and her teenage son, Davis, to move into his large, luxurious home. At first, it seemed like a dream come true, a chance at the stable, loving family life Gladys had long desired. However, cracks in the relationship began to show almost immediately after they moved in together. Augustine's teenage sons from his previous marriage, both older than Davis, began to bully and mistreat the boy. The hostility escalated, with frequent conflicts and even physical altercations. Despite clear evidence that his sons were the aggressors, Augustine consistently sided with them, dismissing Gladys's concerns and refusing to intervene. This created a tense and toxic atmosphere in the home, leaving Gladys feeling helpless as she watched her son suffer. As the situation with their children worsened, Augustine's behavior toward Gladys also began to change. He became increasingly controlling, demanding to know her whereabouts at all times and questioning her about her social interactions, both at work and in her personal life. At first, his inquiries seemed framed by concern, but they soon escalated into relentless surveillance. Augustine would call her constantly, show up unannounced, and scrutinize her every move. His possessive nature started to overshadow the affection he once showed. Fearing for her son's well-being, Gladys made the difficult decision to leave Augustine's home. She moved out with Davis, but Augustine was unwilling to let go of the relationship. He rented a separate house for Gladys and her son, convincing her to continue seeing him. While she hesitated to end things completely, she began to recognize troubling patterns in his behavior. Over time, Augustine's possessiveness intensified. He made demands on her time, constantly called to ensure she was at home or work, and questioned her friendships and professional relationships. While still outwardly maintaining the facade of a devoted partner, bringing flowers, taking her on trips, and maintaining ties with her family, he was quietly isolating her from those closest to her. When Gladys confronted Augustine about his controlling behavior, his temper flared. She attempted to break off the relationship several times, but Augustine's threats of violence and dramatic displays of anger left her frightened. On one occasion, when she tried to end things after discovering his infidelity, he brandished a gun and threatened to kill her if she ever left him. This terrifying incident kept her trapped in the relationship for over a year, despite her growing fear and unhappiness. By late 1998, Gladys had reached her breaking point. After catching Augustine cheating again, she firmly declared the relationship over and moved out of the house he had rented for her. For a time, she believed she had finally escaped his grasp, but she was unaware that Augustine's obsession with her was only growing. What had once seemed like a fairy tale romance had devolved into a dangerous and toxic relationship, with Augustine determined to control Gladys at any cost. This toxic dynamic laid the foundation for the tragedy that would unfold less than a year later. What began as a story of love and mutual admiration had turned into a harrowing nightmare fueled by obsession, jealousy, and unchecked possessiveness. Gladys and James' love story had been a bright spot in her life after the darkness of her tumultuous relationship with Agustin Garcia. They had met at a popular restaurant in early 1999, where James' quiet charm and shared profession as an accountant immediately drew her in. In his free time, James devoted himself to his passion for writing music, a hobby that reflected his creativity and sensitivity. The two felt an instant connection, and their relationship blossomed into something filled with mutual respect and affection. However, Gladys had no idea that her ex Agustin had not moved on. Obsessed and unwilling to let her go, he continued to stalk her, watching her closely and even lurking outside her home. On one occasion, when Gladys and James were spending time together at her house, there was a knock on the door. To their shock, Agustin stood on the doorstep, demanding to speak with Gladys. When she refused and asked him to leave, he flew into a rage, shouting and hurling stones at the windows. Frightened, Gladys called the police, but she chose not to press charges, a decision that would later prove fatal. As the summer of 1999 arrived, James proposed to Gladys and she joyfully accepted. The couple set their wedding date for September 26th, with plans to honeymoon in Hawaii. As they prepared for the celebration, sending out invitations and gathering with loved ones, it seemed that nothing could stand in the way of their happiness. But Agustin's obsession continued to escalate. Just 2 weeks before the wedding, on September 12th, Gladys encountered him unexpectedly at a shopping mall. He approached her, put his arm around her waist as if they were still a couple, and offered to escort her. Terrified by his audacity, but aware of his temper, Gladys did not resist. Instead, she made an excuse about having an urgent matter to attend to and quickly hurried away, desperate to avoid further confrontation. Unknown to her, Augustine was quietly building up to the moment he would exact his revenge. His growing anger, obsession, and refusal to let go would soon culminate in an unthinkable act of violence on what should have been the happiest day of her life. It was supposed to be the happiest day of Gladys Ricart's life. On September 26, 1999, she was surrounded by family and friends in her Ridgefield, New Jersey home, dressed in the stunning white gown she had always dreamed of. Laughter and celebration filled the air as Gladys handed out bouquets to her nieces and posed for photographs. Her fiancé, James Preston, was waiting at the church, eager to say their vows and start their new life together. The cameras were rolling, capturing every joyful moment for what should have been a treasured family archive. At around 3:00 p.m., that joy was shattered. Outside the house, a car pulled up and parked across the street. It was Agustin Garcia, Gladys's ex-boyfriend, who had been stalking her relentlessly since their breakup. He stepped out of the car carrying a briefcase and made his way toward the house. Spotting him from the doorway, Gladys's brother, Juan, immediately intercepted him. "What are you doing here?" Juan demanded. Augustine, wearing a calm and confident expression, claimed that he had been invited and insisted on speaking with Gladys. Despite the unease in his gut, Juan reluctantly allowed him to enter, not wanting to cause a scene in front of the gathered guests. Augustine stepped inside, scanning the room until his eyes locked on Gladys. The moments that followed were captured on video, but no one could have predicted the horror about to unfold. As Gladys stood in the living room, her focus likely on the joyful moments ahead, Agustin walked directly toward her. His demeanor was unnervingly calm. Then, without warning, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a .38 caliber revolver. Gasps and screams erupted as Augustine raised the gun. Gladys barely had time to react before the first shot rang out, striking her in the shoulder. She stumbled back, but there was no time to escape. The second shot hit her squarely in the chest, and as she collapsed to the floor, the third shot pierced her head, leaving no chance of survival. The once cheerful home descended into chaos. Family members screamed and cried, frozen in shock at the unthinkable act they had just witnessed. Wedding photographers, hired to document a day of love and happiness, stood paralyzed, their cameras still recording. The footage showed everything: the calculated way Agustin approached Gladys, his cold and deliberate actions, and the horrifying finality of the shots. As the room erupted around him, Augustine stood motionless, the gun still in his hand. He made no attempt to run. When police arrived moments later, he surrendered without resistance, his expression eerily composed, as if what he had just done was entirely justified in his mind. Gladys Ricart's wedding day, meant to mark a new beginning, had become a scene of unspeakable tragedy. The joy and hope she had fought so hard to build were destroyed in an instant, leaving behind a devastated family and a haunting question: how could someone who once professed love commit such a heinous act? In the immediate aftermath of the murder, Agustin Garcia was taken into custody, where he offered a startling and contradictory account of events. During his initial interrogation, he claimed he had no idea that Gladys Ricart was getting married that day. He alleged that he had only stopped by the house after noticing a gathering of people and cars outside. According to Agustin, when he entered the home, he was attacked by Gladys' brother, Juan, and her son Davis, which caused him to pull out his gun in self-defense. He insisted the shooting was an accident, claiming he had no intention of killing Gladys. As investigators reviewed the evidence, it became apparent that Augustin's story was a fabrication. Witness testimonies from Gladys's family and friends further contradicted his version of events, describing how he had entered the home uninvited and carried out the attack without provocation. Despite this, Agustin's legal team shifted tactics, determined to mount an aggressive defense. In an attempt to salvage their case, Agustin's lawyers turned their focus onto Gladys herself. They portrayed her as manipulative and deceitful, claiming she had continued to accept Agustin's gifts and financial support while secretly planning her wedding to James Preston. The defense suggested that Agustin, heartbroken and blindsided by her alleged betrayal, had acted in a state of temporary insanity brought on by emotional distress. The media latched onto these claims, and the narrative of the case briefly shifted. Agustin's lawyers organized press conferences and interviews, casting him as a victim of Gladys's supposed dishonesty and as a man pushed to his breaking point. While some members of the public sympathized with this portrayal, the prosecution relied on the damning video evidence to dismantle the defense's arguments. The tape clearly showed Agustin's deliberate actions: entering the home with a gun concealed in his briefcase, approaching Gladys with calm precision, and shooting her in cold blood. The claims of self-defense and temporary insanity fell apart under the weight of this irrefutable evidence, which captured not only the murder itself but also Agustin's chilling composure throughout. The investigation left no doubt that this was a calculated and premeditated act, and Agustin's attempts to rewrite the narrative only further solidified the case against him. What began as a web of lies and victim blaming was exposed as the cold-blooded murder of a woman on what should have been the happiest day of her life. After a lengthy trial filled with shocking revelations and emotional testimony, the case against Agustin Garcia reached its conclusion in February 2002. The prosecution had presented overwhelming evidence, including the chilling video footage of the murder, eyewitness testimonies from Gladys Ricart's family and friends, and a detailed account of Augustine's escalating possessiveness and threats in the months leading up to the tragedy. The defense's arguments of self-defense and temporary insanity crumbled under scrutiny. The video evidence alone was devastating, showing Augustine's deliberate actions, entering the house with a concealed weapon, approaching Gladys without provocation, and shooting her at point-blank range. The jury was left with no doubt about his intent. On February 1, 2002, Agustin Garcia was convicted of first-degree murder. The court sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Despite the defense's attempts to paint him as a victim of emotional distress, the verdict reflected the calculated and premeditated nature of his actions. Augustine later attempted to appeal the conviction, claiming that he had acted in a state of shock and temporary insanity upon discovering Gladys's wedding. However, the appeal was denied, with the courts reaffirming the original sentence. The verdict brought a measure of justice for Gladys Ricart's grieving family, who had endured not only the loss of a beloved mother, sister, and friend, but also the public character attacks on her during the trial. While Agustin Garcia would spend decades behind bars, the devastating impact of his actions would forever haunt those who loved Gladys. The tragic murder of Gladys Ricart serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers posed by unchecked possessiveness and abusive relationships. Her story highlights the importance of recognizing warning signs and taking proactive steps to protect oneself. Agustin Garcia's controlling behavior, violent threats, and obsessive actions were clear red flags that should have been met with immediate intervention. Unfortunately, like many victims of abuse, Gladys hesitated to involve law enforcement, a decision influenced by fear, love, and cultural stigmas. This reluctance to seek legal protection ultimately proved to be a fatal mistake. Gladys's death also underscores the devastating consequences of ignoring or downplaying threats from an abusive partner. Augustine's actions, from his attempts to isolate her to his threats of violence, formed a pattern of escalating danger. Her murder is a sobering lesson about the importance of taking such threats seriously and ensuring that victims have access to support and resources. The case sent shockwaves through the community, sparking vital conversations about domestic violence, stalking, and the need for better awareness and intervention. Gladys's story has become a rallying cry for advocates fighting against intimate partner violence, urging victims to recognize abusive behaviors and seek help before it's too late. Community organizations and law enforcement have since called for more robust resources and strategies to protect individuals at risk. Her tragic death remains a painful reminder of how love can turn into obsession and control. It serves as a cautionary tale, encouraging victims to prioritize their safety and well-being and inspiring others to offer support to those in dangerous relationships. Gladys's story, though heartbreaking, continues to drive awareness and action to prevent similar tragedies in the future. If Gladys Ricart's story moved you, it's a powerful reminder of the importance of awareness and action in the face of domestic violence. Stories like hers deserve to be told, not only to honor her memory, but to spark conversations that could save lives. If you'd like to hear more true crime stories that uncover the darkest corners of humanity and shed light on the lessons we can learn, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Let's keep these discussions alive. Share your thoughts, insights, or similar stories in the comments below. Your voice can help create awareness and offer support to those who may be facing similar challenges. Together, we can bring these stories to light and work toward a safer future for everyone.